We will begin today with a few introductions and some of the questions we've prepared for our panelists from the Africa Business Club and Europe Student Club. And then we will get to your questions, which I think are the most important part of today's session. We want to make sure that you leave this session feeling like you've had all your questions answered about these two amazing organizations and our panelists' experiences at the GSB. So without further ado, let's get started. So for student panelists, could you all introduce yourselves, perhaps stating your name, your year at the GSB, or hometown, or pre-GSB, your moved, perhaps a favorite thing about the GSB? Why don't we start with Ori?
Hi, everybody. My name is Oriakasa Ida, but I go by Ori. Pre-GSB, I was in Los Angeles, and I am representing the Africa Business Club. I'm the CFO of the Africa Business Club. And one of my favorite things about the GSB, it's cliche, but it's the people. I've made such wonderful friends. I've met some wonderful faculty members, and it's just a great community over here.
Awesome, thank you. How about Jacob?
Happy to. So my name's Jacob. I'm originally from Germany. I was living in Berlin prior to the GSB. And I think my favorite thing about the GSB, I have to agree with Ori on that. I think the moment I really realized it was I was in Europe over the summer, and kind of 1 or 2 weeks out, I already missed being here, missed the people. And I was really looking forward to coming back. And I think having that feeling after only being here for a year is pretty magical and something I haven't experienced before.
Awesome. And you're representing the Europe
Club? The Europe Club, exactly.
Okay. And what's your role in the club?
I'm a part of the leadership team.
Awesome. Thank you. Joshua, want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Jessica. I am, together with Ori, part of the leadership of the Africa Business Club. I'm the president. I have a co-president called Eugene, who unfortunately could not make it today. So welcome, everyone. Before the GSB, I was in Kano, Nigeria. And my favorite thing about the GSB, of course, everyone is going to say the people, so I'll just add something else. I'd say the inflection that it forces upon yourself. Even if you think you have it all figured out, I assure you Stanford will force you to think it through all over again. So I really like that.
That's beautifully said. Thank you. And finally, Mark.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Mark. I'm from Germany as well. Originally from a small town called Münster in the western part of Germany, but lived in London in the UK, most recently before coming to the GSB. I'm a co-president for the Europe Club, working with Jacob and the leadership team over there. And my favorite thing at the GSB, I have to agree with Ori and Jacob about the people. I think I've never been in a community that is, on one hand, inspiring you, but also challenge you to really reach your goal and take the next step. But on a more broader level, to take a step back, I think it's about the opportunities. You really have time to reflect. You have time to move into any kind of direction you want to go into. And I feel like this kind of freedom and liberty to explore is something that I really appreciate about my time over here.
Awesome. Thank you all. So to begin, I wanted to ask if you all could tell us about the clubs you're representing, who's involved, what students are involved, and what kinds of events, initiatives, or programs does your club organize? Whoever wants to start.
Okay, I can go. So the Africa Business Club focuses on creating a community of, let's use the word business, or African business amongst those who appreciate Africa's potential and Africa's nature and Africa's people. We like to say that we promote non-exploitative business on the continent, because people have been doing business on the continent for centuries, but most of the business is not the kind that we want to happen. So we focus on promoting non-exploitative business. We also focus on promoting community between those who are from the continent and those who want to learn more about the continent, and that is as regards those here on the GSB. And so with that kind of broad mandate, people who are involved in the club range from students at the GSB, so African students at the GSB, or non-African students of African descent at the GSB, and people who are also not Africans at all at the GSB. And we're also focusing a lot on getting people from other programs who are very interested in business on the continent. So whether they want to start businesses or whether they want to just become investors, or they just want to learn more about it. So it's a pretty broad mandate, and hence a broad participant pool. I want to maybe allow Ori to sound in a little bit before I talk about some of the events or programs that we do.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. I think totally agree. There are there's so many different kinds of people that join the Africa Business Club, which makes it a really wonderful community to be a part of. People that have various different connections to the continent, people that want to learn more. And I think that spirit leads to the kinds of events that we throw, community building, speaker series, all sorts. So really grateful to be part of this community.
Yes. And so maybe I can just list a few of the events that we organize. Pre-COVID times, we had a very definite set of events. We had launches, which we call the Next Stop series, with people who had started businesses on the planet, people who had invested on the planet, whether again of African descent or non-African descent, trying to answer topical questions like, where do you start your business? Should it be at home or should it be away? How do you get funding and things like that? We had an Inspire series, which we were supposed to start last year with the Seed, which you'll get to know about. They focus on entrepreneurship in emerging markets, and that brings very high ticket speakers to talk about some of their experiences, breaking barriers, investing on the continent, governance on the continent. And our capstone event is the Africa Business Forum, which is the largest student-run and maybe even attended event on campus. Usually has as many as 500 people, and usually happens in spring. So this is just a sample of some of the activities that we organize yearly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that description.
Should we go ahead for the Euro Club?
Yeah, please.
Sure. I'm happy to start, and I'll let Jacob add. So who's involved in Euro Club? We're a leadership team of 6 MBA 2 students, and we have about 120 members in our club. So it's about a quarter of the students, of one particular year. I think our mission is really threefold. I think we want to advance the cultural understanding of Europe. We want to add to the social cohesiveness, and we also want to provide some professional education. So what do I mean by that? I think first, on the cultural kind of awareness part, we want to make sure that we take parts from Europe and bring it to the GSB. So in the past, we had Italian dinners, we had German breakfasts, we had side kinds of celebrations. We had like an Oktoberfest pre-COVID, and we also right now are considering like online and virtual events that we can host to replace these in-person events. I think secondly, social. We want to create cohesiveness and identification with Europe within the school and within the students. But also we want to foster connections of current students with alums, because what many people don't know, there are actually a lot of alums working in Europe. The GSB is usually known for having a lot of alums in the Bay Area, but there are a lot of people in Europe who love to be connected with current students. So we really try to foster those relationships. Most recently, we hosted a tech panel, for instance, with people who worked in technology companies in Europe and some of the big players. It was really helpful for students to build these kind of connections. And I think third, we try to really give a professional education to our club members. So, for instance, we've not only seen a lot of Europeans trying to go back to Europe after the GSB, but we've also increasingly seen domestic or American students or international students as a whole trying to move to Europe for at least some part of their post GSB career. So in the past, there have been workshops on how to recruit in Europe, what is the interview etiquette in Europe, how to obtain a visa, and what is the work authorization environment. And we plan to continue to do so. I'll stop here and let Jacob add.
I think, Mark, you summed it up really well. A couple of points I'd like to highlight is for example, one thing we've tried to do is bring just some of the European topics here. So we've had some discussion series in the past, kind of bringing in a diverse opinion around some of the topics that are discussed here in the GSB and bringing a kind of a new lens to it. I think that's something that stood out to me. And on the other hand, just seeing how many people are in some way connected, interested in Europe is always really engaging, and getting those people connected, right? If it's an MBA1 and MBA2 alumni and connecting those people and bringing them together, because that's what the GSB is all about. It's all about the people you get to know here and spanning that network as efficiently as possible is what I see as kind of the main priority for the club, in making sure that whoever is interested and whoever we can help out is making sure that there's an opportunity there.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm struck by and really excited to hear about the ways that these clubs cultivate community and connection, which is really what this week is all about. And I'm curious about the ways that your clubs have used the resources of the GSB to connect with communities and expand your connections, whether that's with guest speakers, whether that's with alumni. So could you tell us a little bit about how your clubs have connected with different resources and departments at GSB to expand community and connect with people?
Maybe I'll take a first kind of things that come to mind. On the one hand, what we try to do is we try to co-host events with other clubs here at the GSB. So, for example, if we're talking about entrepreneurship in Europe, we'll co-sponsor the event with the entrepreneurship club. If we're talking about consulting in Europe, we'll do it with the consulting club. So, bringing kind of different student clubs together at the GSB is really powerful, and making sure that people who are interested actually see the events and that happens. And then also working kind of with alumni if they come to campus here, because there's some class reunion. That's obviously a great opportunity to have an alumni speak. I know we had Bill Browder at the beginning of last year, which was a really great event. And what else comes to mind? And generally, alumni are just great for panelists. That's kind of an upside of this whole Zoom environment, is that it's much more common to jump on kind of a lunch session with somebody in Europe who's kind of in their evening session, as all of you who are dialed in Europe at the moment are kind of at their afternoon already. That's a great opportunity to get people here and get them involved. You know, if somebody founded a company in Italy or something, normally he maybe wouldn't fly out for a lunch session, but we can definitely have him Zoom in. So there's a huge opportunity there at the moment.
I think it was recently, just to add to this, I think we've also engaged very frequently with the CMC, with the Career Management Center at the GSB. Actually, Jacob and I will have a call with them later this afternoon to discuss recruiting strategies for first and second year students in Europe, and basically brainstorm ideas how to create even more opportunities for students to make the move over to Europe.
Yeah, and from the Africa Business Club perspective, I think a lot of the same things apply, partnering with the CMC to highlight career opportunities, working with alumni and taking advantage of this virtual world for people to just pop in. But to add a lighthearted thing, the GSB gives us a lot of money for food. And so and African food is great. So we come together pre-COVID in person to just enjoy the food across the continent, but also virtually having lunches together to kind of build community and learn more about the different cultural aspects across the continent.
Ori saying that just made me hungry. So, yes, I definitely echo everything that Jacob, Mark, and Ori have said. And in addition, we work together, for example, with admissions, because also something that we care about is improving or increasing African attendance here at the GSB and even at Stanford in general. As many of you know, some other schools maybe are closer to the continent, and so Stanford, there's a big opportunity for Stanford to increase its presence on the continent. We work together, for example, with SEED because they focus a lot on emerging economies, and they are very wonderful with a lot of the programs, that they have planned. A lot of the entrepreneurs that they've supported, a lot of the businesses who sometimes are even looking for some of the members of the club to assist with projects and co. And finally, I'll just highlight the Night Hennessy program that is also focused on getting more people from the continent into the program, and we're trying to see how we can expand working with them. So of course there are many more, but we just shows you that the resources at the GSB are always at our disposal.
Awesome. Thank you all. Now I'm feeling hungry too. So thank you all for sort of walking us through the nuts and bolts of your organizations. I was also curious to hear about your personal experiences with your organizations as well. If you could share how you got involved, what is it that drew you to the organization and made you want to take a leadership role? I would love to hear about your sort of personal journey to and through the organizations you're representing.
Okay, maybe I can go first this time. Only the ABC can go first this time. Actually, it was food that drew me in. Scratch that. Well, during the orientation week, a few people from the club, had reached out to make us feel welcome, just hi, hello. And of course, after I think it was even before the academic adjustment period had ended, we had, I think, a welcome event, where everybody tried to make us feel welcome, tell us how we can make this place a home away from home. So I think I was just sucked in by the warmth and, sometimes the relative familiarity of hearing people who understand my context talk about this. And I felt, at least personally, that it was very helpful to me. And if I could make myself available to do it for others, then why not? So I think that's one of the things that stimulated my interest in taking up a leadership position. Another would be that coming here, I'm really passionate about Africa. Some would call me Pan-African. There are many of these labels and co. And I'm personally from Nigeria, which holds, let's say, an important position or distinction in Nigeria. And so coming here, I had a thesis that people like me and many people like us here, our contribution to our countries and our continent would be very important in moving us from emerging economies to where it is that we exactly want to be. And so I thought that the ABC was a wonderful platform to try out that thesis and connect with other people who shared those same thoughts with me. So I think I'll drop those two and see what motivated Ori to take up the leadership position.
Yeah, I think similarly. So I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. My family's from Delta State, Nigeria, and being Nigerian is a very core part of who I am and my experiences and I want to give back to the country and the continent that did so much for me and got me to where I am today. So I think that was the impetus for me wanting to be a part of the Africa Business Club. Food also helped. I remember my favorite event that we did last year was at the very beginning. We all drove up to San Francisco to one of the new Nigerian restaurants because they're few and far between over here in the Bay. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to be connected to my classmates um, and when I decided to be part of leadership, it was based on the encouragement of Joshua and Eugene, but as an opportunity to help shape what the future contributions of this club can be for future classes, and also for how we can give back to the diaspora community here in the Bay, in the U.S., and also abroad. So, really grateful for that opportunity. You can hand it over to the Europe Club.
I'll kick us off. I think what drew me is also kind of a sense of community. As I arrived here, you quickly get to know a couple of people from the Euro Club. There's an intro event, and you have immediately some sort of connection that you can reach out to. And I think going forward, Europe is going to be some part of my journey. So connecting with people in the area and in the region is obviously really helpful to that. In terms of the leadership role, I felt like it was my responsibility to participate and shape that for the incoming class. So, for example, we organized these one-on-one chats in the summer as everybody was kind of really unsure about the COVID situation, making sure that everybody who, all the admits who were accepted here felt welcome, felt prepared, could just voice even the simplest of questions. And creating that sense of community is my main priority for the people who are here, and making sure everybody feels like Stanford is a home and the GSB is their home.
Yeah, I'll echo everything that Jacob said. I think for me personally, there were two factors that I want to highlight. One, I feel like some regional groups have a very strong identification at the GSB with where they're coming from, and I feel like with especially people coming from Europe, that identification does more happen on a country level, but not on a continent level. And we felt that, given that there are so many people from Europe around, it would be great to just create a little bit more identification with the continent. And I think too, although I want to spend some time after the GSB in the US, I really want to go back to Europe in the long run, and basically helping set structures in place and helping create connections between students and alums is really the one thing that excited me, especially as I think about my post GSB time some years down the road.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. It's clear that community is really important to all of you and to your organizations. And I think Ori kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I'd be curious to hear some more of those stories. Like, what is one of your favorite memories from your time with the club? And Ori, feel free to share another one. I definitely feel like I'm going to need to grab myself a snack after this panel, hearing about all of the food adventures. But yeah, what's a favorite memory that you all have had during your time with these clubs?
Okay. Of course, it involves food. By now, you can tell it's a recurring theme. But I'd say the Nigerian Independence Day last year. So when I was an MBA 1, some of the MBA 2s invited us to their pass down, and we had amazing food, spent an amazing time playing games, and literally just reconnecting with the continent from so far away. It's music, it's art, it's movies, some of the jokes, some of the slangs. And until I left that house, I literally thought I was at home in Nigeria. I think anytime I think upon that day, I still smile.
I can add next to my favorite memories. I think coincidentally they also revolve around food. So there was a small group dinner series in the fall quarter or winter quarter last year, where members from the Europe Club could just sign up with MBA to group dinner leaders. It was really a setting of 6 or 7 GSB students across classes, but with this common connection of coming from Europe or wanting to go to Europe. And it was just like a really lovely evening that we spent together and had great conversations that revolved about the Europe Club, but also about GSB life in general. So I think that was one of my highlights. And a second one, just very personally, one of the MBA2 student leaders 1 year ago organized a German breakfast back in the day, which I didn't have for ages. Jacob was there as well. And we just spent, I think, a Sunday morning together with a few people, maybe 20, and basically shared our tradition, shared our culture. And that was really a very rewarding experience for me.
Happy to go next. I think for me, it was those early moments when I came to GSB and immediately had a couple of people I could reach out to. I could, ask all those stupid questions you don't know who to ask, and how incredibly helpful they were in terms of that, in terms of just orienting yourself around campus and course selection and all that good stuff. That was extremely helpful. I think that definitely stands out. And I think secondly, actually, a highlight has been being part of leadership this year. So that's been really good and really fun getting to know the leadership team and working together on making sure there's great events and we engage the community. That's been extremely rewarding.
I guess I could add another story. I remember sometime last year we had one of the Next Up series attendees come, and I think that's something that's very special about the ABC community is that the conversations don't just stop in that room, and we were able to continue the conversations in my room, actually still over food. I made jollof rice and plantain, and Eugene and people from Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria were all in my room. We were discussing our passions for the continent, and we all come from different backgrounds. Some have spent significant time in their different respective countries, some less so. And so being able to have that conversation together is just really special for me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your stories. And I hope your stories are helpful for all of the attendees on the line for us. Jacob, you had mentioned how helpful it was to have that opportunity to ask people all of those quote unquote stupid questions upon arriving on campus. And I'm just wondering, sort of going beyond the organizations you're representing today, knowing that we have so many folks on the line who have maybe never been to campus before, are calling in from all over the world. What's something that surprised you about the GSB, or maybe something you wish you had known about the GSB prior to the application process or prior to arriving on campus?
I may not be the best person to answer this question because I knew very, very little about the program. I actively didn't know too much. The only thing I knew is that I knew a couple of alumni who did who did this in the 90s, who did this in the 80s. And the way they talked about it 30 years out was so enthusiastic that I thought these are people I really value. So I was sure it was going to be an incredible experience. And I was just kind of the opportunity I got in here. I'm just going to enjoy the ride and not stress too much about the details. So I think one thing I didn't appreciate before coming is how much this is a reflective exercise as much as a learning exercise. So it's much more about learning about yourself. I think that is one thing, kind of one angle I previously hadn't really appreciated it.
I'll add, again, can only echo what Jacob said. I think two aspects that stood out for me is one, what really surprised me is the humility of the people. Obviously, GSB attracts very interesting candidates from all walks of life, but I yet have to come across a person in our class that is really not humble and doesn't really act in ways that are very open to connect and open to share his or her expertise. So I think that was one of the most pleasantly surprising factors. One thing I wish I had known is how much of a choose your own adventure it is. It really comes down to you what you want to put your focus on, and you can go through these 2 years and study very hard for every class. You can go through these 2 years and try to meet everyone in your class. You can try to spend 2 years recruiting, and you can do pretty much everywhere in between. But it's really about you, what you want to put your focus on, your priorities in. And I think that's something that I didn't really realize when applying.
Yeah, what Mark and Jacob have said resonates so much with me. Um, I can add one or two. I'd say what has surprised me the most about the GSB, how much I didn't know coming here. Um, if I were to give a simple example, I'd say that in my mind, I had mapped business out in my head along particular verticals, and my thought was, oh, it's like this, it's like this, it's like. I've had to unlearn that totally and relearn, shall we say, a new paradigm. And just as I thought that, oh, I had figured it out, I realized that, oh, it's ever changing. And so I have to allow this small confidence interval for change. So and to Mark's point about how people here are humble, it's really just about how in tune they are with how much they need to continue learning on a daily basis to remain relevant and to become leaders that can actually change organizations and change the world. So that has been very surprising. What I wished I knew how athletic people and outdoorsy people were here. I might have picked up a hobby, gotten in shape. It's literally like waiting for summer and going to the beach. People definitely balance health concerns with academic concerns, and just as they're trying to develop their minds, they're also trying to develop themselves holistically, physically, and otherwise, and that has been really refreshing. You won't see a pot belly at the GSB, I assure you.
I didn't think I could be surprised by the GSB because I had come here for undergrad, so I felt like I knew Stanford, I knew the thing. But something I wish I'd known is that while it's important to be focused, I think the 2 years fly by like that. Just can't believe we're already at this point. It's important to leave room for serendipity because I think it's those moments where you didn't expect something to happen, the meeting with someone from across campus or the class that you weren't sure was really aligned with what you wanted to do, but had an aha moment in that, and taking a little bit of a risk that I think you get some of the most special magical moments here.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. So at this time in the session, we're going to shift towards taking some questions from our attendees. So for our attendees who joined late, feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box for our panelists. We are very, very grateful for your questions. So there's a theme of questions from our attendees around alumni. Can you all talk a little bit about the alumni networks in Europe and in Africa?
Okay, I can go for the ABC, and then Ori can feel free to add in if there's anything I left out. I'd say that the alumni network from Africa is amazing. It's not just deep, it's connected in such a way as to for you to feel like you're all in the same space. So it's while you can have access to a very wide network, the degrees of separation and maybe the process that you need to go through to bridge those gaps can sometimes make it feel like it's arduous work. Here, everybody feels like they're just one degree of separation away. And so that the network is very close. And the network doesn't just include Africans, it includes those who have worked on the continent, invested on the continent from other places, because I'm sure, as you very well know, there are many non-Africans that share our passion for Africa. And the networks are also, in terms of achievements, I'd say that they are unmatched. You have people with ideas that have changed the world, that are currently changing the world. And for example, I'll give you a specific example. Our Inspire Speaker series that we're trying to organize, we decided we wanted, somebody who, when we mentioned in the forum, they were like, no, it's impossible to bring that person now. They're just too busy. But just spoke to someone who just graduated, and he was like, oh, definitely, I spoke with him yesterday. Just let me text him and see. So that's how productive that network is. So I don't know if Ori has anything to add.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think just a couple examples of how that manifests are, we have this WhatsApp group that has maybe the last 6 years of Africa Business Club alumni on it, and anyone you want to speak to, any startup you think you've heard about in some country, someone knows that person, and there is just a deep desire to support each other and help people achieve their career dreams. And I think because of the strength of the alumni network, it's exactly why we're able to get such amazing speakers, and people are just always willing to speak with you and come to our events still to this day. One of the favorite event I spoke about, we had alumni there too, that just wanted to pop in and stay connected. So I think it's a very strong community all over the continent, and even in Europe and all over the world. So it's a very powerful resource.
I'll add to that from the Europe Club perspective. So we have a WhatsApp group as well, which is very active, especially when it comes to logistical questions. So whenever there's a question of who knows an immigration lawyer in London, who knows how to get a visa while being in country XYZ, that's really where I think the value of this WhatsApp group and just being connected on such a short dial with the alums really comes to life. I think, secondly, there are a lot of people at the GSB who are trying to build stronger networks in Europe. So we work very closely, for instance, with the CMC. I was part of a group who planned a study trip to Europe, and we basically pulled in all resources from Europe Club to the Career Management Center to basically structure a program that targets specifically building alum connections in Europe. And I can just speak for the UK and Germany. The alum community over there is very active. So there are like frequent receptions. I think Jacob attended one of these in Germany back in the days, where really alums from back to the 80s or 90s invite people and admits to their house and have a chat with them. I attended such a chat in London back in the days, and it was really a great opportunity to connect with alums and build connections across graduation years.
I think just to add some color, I think what always stands out to me is how personal these connections are. Like, for example, we had an admit event with an 86 alum who's a board member of one of Germany's largest companies, and you think this would be some formal event, and it ended up being him grilling, barbecuing in his backyard with just a group of 20 people. Extremely personal, very, very interested in what we're doing and what we're up to, and helping us out and challenging us. So I think that really differentiates the alumni network. It's not only a professional group of people, sitting down and talking about career or business or whatever. This is really about building that personal connection and getting to know somebody as a human being, rather than as just somebody in your network and in your Rolodex.
Awesome. Thank you all. Sounds like our alumni are just as hungry as we are, ready to grab a plate and connect with current students. Another great question from one of our attendees. Bomi writes, I imagine studies take up a lot of time and are very challenging. How does joining a club complement your studies more than it distracts or takes up your time? And how do you find a balance between your studies and extracurriculars?
I can speak to that. And I think I can elaborate a little bit more on the point that I mentioned earlier, which is that it's pretty much like a choose your own adventure program over here. Obviously, it's an academic program and you need to devote sufficient time to your studies. But there's always a certain degree how much effort or how much time you put into the classes. So sometimes you want to get great grades and you spend an extra hour finishing up an essay. Sometimes you feel that this particular class is not one of your focus areas, so you might try to shortcut a little bit, and that's fine as well. I think at the end of the day, studies hardly take up our entire days at any given point in time. Course load can vary over the years, but over the quarters. But at the end of the day, I feel like hardly anybody spends his entire day on academics. So I feel like the clubs don't cannibalize time you could spend on class time. I feel, on the other hand, it rather complements it, as it gives you a kind of peer group of people who are coming from the same background, who might have similar ways of thinking, and you can just easily reach out to them and connect on things you learned in class. And on the other hand, you might come across somebody that you find incredibly inspiring, who's a guest speaker in your class, who comes from Europe, comes from Africa, or comes from any part in the world, and those clubs might be able to help you to build that connection to that particular person, or to give you introductions in a specific field. So in my point of view, that's my very, very individual point of view, I feel like the clubs only complement, and I don't feel like my involvement in the Euro Club, neither as a member last year nor as a leadership person this year, does take away too much time from the studies.
Okay, I might add to that. I agree totally with everything Mark has said. I think it actually complements your studies. And I think that leadership is often a balance between multitasking with empathy and ruthless prioritization. And since we're here in the MBA to advance our course as leaders and learn how to be leaders, this is literally just a practice test, and a practice test where, in quote, failure doesn't come with very huge consequences. So this is a safe space for you to try out these skills and become a leader. And so to that end, you find people in 5 clubs, and they're at the top of the class, and there are people in 2 clubs, and they are very okay with both the academic and their social experience. So again, to Mark's point, it's a self-directed journey.
I can add that our leadership teams are usually pretty big, and so people can help take off weight on you if things are particularly heavy for a certain week, and vice versa. And so I think there's a lot of balance that way by sharing the burden. And I do think being part of leadership and being part of these clubs can complement your studies. I had to write a paper on this company named Silco Watch, based in Kenya, and I knew that someone knew this founder because I was part of the ABC club, and we were able to talk to them and get, like, I think, a great paper because of it. So I think they're like very tactical perks, but because of what we talked about earlier about people at the GSB just being so kind and welcoming and helpful, that your members of your leadership team can help you when the load is particularly heavy.
I think I have nothing to add. You all said it perfectly.
Thank you all. We have another great question from Mikhail, who writes, were there any cultural differences that you struggled with in Stanford specifically, or in California in general, like how to start a conversation, how to stay in line, things like that, or anything else? And if there were any cultural differences that you struggled with, how did you manage or overcome them?
I can go. I'm a little bit of a philosopher, and so I generally believe that the pathway to whatever destination it is that we get to is necessarily going to have turns, obstacles, potholes, and so on. That each and every one of those things adds extra to the experience, and so I have savored those differences actually and learned from them, and I find out that sometimes what you learn from those differences are they're actually transferable skills when it comes to things like managing upwards in a workplace or managing a very diverse workforce or things like that. And so personally, I'd say I've learned mostly by observation, seeing how other people from other contexts do it. But sometimes it's actually just being asking a blunt question and saying, hey, I realize that we do things differently where I come from, and you people do things in this way. Can you please explain the rationale? And then you create some blended solution for yourself, because that's the beauty of all of this. I think because California is so welcoming, and specifically the GSB, you're not expected to do it in a particular way. You're expected to do it your way, as long as there's regard for community and other people's feelings and how your actions land on others. So I'd say that it's still a work in progress, and maybe the 2 years of an MBA is actually too short for you to be able to fully overcome all of these things. But I actually think it's part of the MBA experience that you will enjoy as an international student, because many people would also ask you, hey, I see you guys do things in a different way. I'm actually enamored with it. Can you tell me about it? So there's a little bit of give and take there.
Anybody else want to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Josh. There's a couple of like ground norms that are established pretty quickly at the GSB, and then within that, it's really about an individual and how you show up as an individual. That matters most, and this is an environment where you get to know each other as individuals rather than as whatever stereotypes you have. So I think it's actually an incredible opportunity to bridge those kind of cultural gaps that sometimes may exist.
Yeah, I think one aspect that I will add is I feel like the GSB is a lot about self-disclosure. I think it's about making yourself known and having other people know you. And I think that's something that, and I might be too generalizing here, but I feel like in the German culture where I grew up, that is not as much of a focus point in interpersonal dynamics as it is. Maybe in the US and California at the GSB in particular, I don't know where the funnel is really active, but I feel like the level of self-disclosure and like how vulnerable you show yourself to each other is really something that was somewhat new to me. At the same time, was the kind of foundation for a lot of very meaningful relationships and friendships.
Awesome. Thank you all. We have another great question from Sabrina, who writes, what do you feel that the impact of the Africa and Europe clubs has been on GSB's campus? Sabrina adds that she would also love to hear what you all are most excited about for the Africa and Europe clubs in regard to their futures.
Okay. For the Africa Business Club, I think I mentioned during the introduction that we organize as an independent event because of some logistical concerns. The Stanford Africa Business Forum, which is the largest Africa-run student event, largest student-run event on campus. And during that time, the GSB literally gives us the entire campus to make use of. The facilities, the faculty are very helpful. The staff on the back end, everything. And so this has, shall we say, created a bit of deeper knowledge or deeper interest in African issues amongst both staff and people who otherwise might just meet an African every other month or every year, stuff like that. So I'd say that in that respect, the ADC has had a huge influence here. Secondly, I think that there's a greater engagement with African issues from a diversity perspective. So, for example, with the NSAS protests in Nigeria the other day, um, everybody who had a Nigerian address attached to them, or maybe their identity, got an email from wider Stanford school, not even just the GSB, saying, hey, we understand this must be a stressful time, things like that. But what I heard from the back end or from the backside is that a lot of it had to do with, conversations with the GSB leadership or the GSB faculty. So it means that our effect has not just been on the GSB, it has also extended as far as Stanford. I would also say that because we have created a conduit of African food here on campus, and now everybody can call the lady who supplies the food. There's a renaissance of African food around campus. So before long, you might go to a canteen here, and the only kind of rice you'll be able to buy is jollof rice. So.
And I can quickly chime in on the second part of what I'm really excited about for the Africa Business Club. I think Eugene and Josh have done such a great job pushing forward cross-campus engagement, not only at Stanford between different schools like the law school and the med school, people that are interested in Africa, but also other schools like Berkeley and are just next door, or given the virtual world, just other schools around the US. And I think that's a really beautiful opportunity to build community that's dispersed. And so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think in terms of impact, it is around the goals that we stated. It's social. It's getting people together on the social level. Get people connected. It's making sure people who are interested in working in Europe have the resources, have the capabilities, feel ready to jump into the job search there. And then I think thirdly, probably around admissions, making sure that applicants are there and that people who are accepted here feel welcome and who know who to reach out to and get connected with. It's kind of the impact we try and have, and there's still so much we want to do on all three levels. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited to get more Europeans here. I'm excited to get more people to work in Europe, and I'm excited to create a stronger sense of community of everybody who's in any way interested or connected to Europe, and make sure people know each other and not only know each other on a superficial level for that kind of, as I was saying before, for the Rolodex, but actually get to know each other as a person.
Yeah, I'll close out with saying, in terms of impact, there has been this program over the summer that basically matched up people from the Europe Club leadership with admits who had questions about the GSB over the summer, and we all had these chats in the leadership team, and just like connecting with the folks that I spoke to back then, it seemed like that these touch points have been incredibly helpful for them. So I think we just want to keep being available as a resource to provide insights, both for people who want to come here, but also for people who are here. What I'm most excited about, I feel like probably one aspect is a professional aspect. There have been a few people from our class who are domestic American students who got really excited about the prospect of living in Europe. And I feel like seeing them and hearing the feedback that basically our sessions provided helpful insights to them was really rewarding. And I feel like we want to continue to do that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So I see we're coming up to the top of the hour. We have one final question. I want to thank our attendees for all of the really, really thoughtful questions they've submitted. If you have any outstanding questions, please feel free to reach out to our office or attend more of the diversity and leadership events going on this week to learn more about student experiences at the GSB. You'll also see a poll pop up. So if you could please fill out the poll so we can continue improving. my apologies, there was no poll on this event. But if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our final question for this session is, looking back, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself as you were getting ready for business school?
I'll go first again. I would say choose Stanford. Okay, seriously. um, I think that the advice I'd give myself is to come more open-minded. I came here with a thesis about what exactly I wanted, and it changed maybe like after 4 or 5 weeks. I can see a scenario where if I had been more open-minded earlier, I might even have absorbed a lot more than I did before I figured out that I was doing it the wrong way. And yes, Ori made the point earlier that you need to be focused about the range of things that you want to get out of the business school experience, because this is like Candyland and you can get pushed in a million different directions. But still having that receptiveness to the many aha moments that can occur in many different settings to set you down the path that maybe you were made for. I think that's what I'd tell myself.
For me, if I could go back to myself pre-GSB, I would take more time off. I think I've never been as busy as I have been at the GSB, and it's a wonderful thing because you're seeing people, you're going to meetings, you're meeting like great speakers and all of that stuff. But it is exhausting too, and so take some time to take care of yourself before you jump into this whirlwind experience.
I think similarly to Ori, get ready to stretch yourself. So whatever you need to get ready for this experience, I think take the time and get into the right headspace. That once you're here, you're ready to learn and engage and bring your best self.
Yeah, I'll echo everything that has been said. I think in addition, I think it helps to come in with a hypothesis of what you want to do during the 2 years and after the GSB. At the same time, I emphasize, it resonates a lot when it was said that you should give yourselves the kind of room for serendipity. I think the GSB can be a rocket ship that takes you on the career you never even thought was possible. It can be a playground where you try a few things and some things work, some things don't. But ultimately, it seems like most, if not all, of the alums have found this experience incredibly rewarding, no matter what their journey has been. So don't come in with some goals, but don't get too focused on them, and let yourself be inspired by the experience and by the classmates that you come across.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with us today. And thank you so much to our attendees for joining us. As we wrap up, as I said before, feel free to reach out to us if you have more questions, attend more of our diversity and leadership events, or continue your journey at mystanford.mba. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.